Well, Rob, we're here dumping some Cabernet from the Horse Heaven Hills. Why don't you talk a little bit about this fruit that you have coming in?
Well, this is Cabernet from the Alder Ridge Vineyard. It's right in the so-called Alderdale area, just a little bit, a mile or two away from the so-called Canoe Ridge area. In my opinion, 30 years in the making, the best Cabernet in the States coming out of that area quite regularly. I mean, just beautiful quality fruit. It might be tied with the Red Mountain bench for Cabernet quality, in my opinion. This is one of our very first loads of Cabernet. It's here it is, the first week of October, and Cabernet's just getting to a nice state of maturity. We had a nice warm September, but the temperatures crashed down a little bit in the last week of September, and it's been pretty cool the last eight or so days. One day of rain, and one thing we're seeing this year, which is by heat summation as average a year as we could ever hope to have, but we're seeing very high acidities, which I like. It takes me back to my early days in Washington when our high acids were one of the things that always distinguished us. The intensity of fruit character seems to be very high across the board. I think this has the makings of an exceptional year. And a winemaker will tell you that almost every year, but it's really out there this year. We've got good stuff.
Now, how many tons of Cabernet do you have here?
Well, this load was about a 16-ton load. It comes in, it's mechanically harvested, as you'll see from some of the video you took of the fruit. It's virtually stemless and has nothing other than grapes in it. They just do a magnificent job picking it with the mechanical methods. 16 tons will turn in roughly with Cabernet, we'll see about 60 cases per ton in finished wine, so that's going to be about a little under 900 cases coming off this whole truck in several years' time when we get the chance to bottle it. So here in a matter of an hour and a half, we're going to crush something that would take us a full day to bottle, but the real effort comes next with the pump overs and the barreling and the racking and a year and a half of steady effort to get that wine to the bottle.
Now, this is your 31st vintage in Washington and your 33rd vintage overall, counting a couple in California.
Yes, indeed. And it's I'm getting tired, but it's still it's so energizing and exciting to have fruit coming in. Then it gets to be November and I take a nap.
All right. What else have you got coming in? You've had Sauvignon Blanc come in. You've had some Merlot and some Syrah, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've had lots and lots of Chardonnay has come in. Yesterday we crushed orange muscat, which is always exciting to do because it's such flavorful fruit. And so we've had the standard mix. We had some very nice looking Semillon about a week ago, and so really the only thing that's out there and not picked in large numbers is Cabernet. We've even received about 2/3 of the Zinfandel we're going to get already, which is early. But there is a threat of rain down in the eastern Columbia Gorge where the fruit's grown, and it's not a chance you want to take with Zinfandel because it's prone to rot very quickly if it rains. So we're being safe.
15, 20 years ago, do you think you would have been standing here talking about Washington Zinfandel?
No, I wouldn't have imagined such a thing. Certainly 25, 30 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined talking about Washington Cabernet. Much has changed, attributable mostly to the fact that we've learned how to grow the grapes properly in our climate, but also undeniably it's warmer than it was then. Whether it's a permanent man-made effect or temporary, who the hell knows? But what I do know is that it's getting warmer.
Does that prompt you to look for cooler places perhaps for some grape varieties, or are you happy with the warmth?
I'm pretty happy with the warmth. I think we see maybe a different side of varieties, but we still get, I think, exceptional quality. I think like any change nature hands you, you have to think about how you're going to work with it. For example, with some reds, it's an appropriate opportunity to balance the crop a little differently. A slightly larger crop in balance with the vine is going to mature at a better rate of speed and make better wine. that will break the grower's heart to have an extra half a ton an acre.
So we're roughly 4 or 5 weeks into harvest. You're pretty happy with where things are
Oh
right
yeah,
now.
I think it's, like I say, this is definitely going to be one of the good ones if the weather holds. My biggest fear now is unseasonable freezing weather at night, which brings the grapes kind of to a crashing halt in maturing, and also just makes them tough to handle. Pretty difficult working conditions, but there's no reason to think that's going to happen. There's every reason to think we have another three good weeks to bring in the Cabernet, and let's say Riesling is still straggling out there, but otherwise much of the fruit's in. I'd say we're a good 60% finished here.
Great. Well, thank you, Rob.
You bet.